With the first pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Baker Mayfield.
Wow.
Quarterback, Oklahoma.
It is Baker Mayfield.
From my perspective, he was the number 4 overall quarterback, right? But I know John Dorsey, and from John Dorsey's perspective, John's got a little swag, and he likes swag. He likes confidence. This kid's a competitor. If you're looking at the plus side of him, you know, he's under 6'1". He finds lanes to throw. He's thick in the chest. He's highly accurate. Playmaker. Highly accurate on the move. His character has cut both ways in different buildings with GMs and head coaches I've talked with. Now, when you look at him on the field, there's a lot to like. Trust me, he's an athlete. He might not run 4.5. He's an athletic, competitive kid. He's going to light up the locker room.
Yeah, maybe or maybe not. Who knows? Who can tell? It's the crapshoot of the NFL draft, and Baker Mayfield was the number 1 pick by the Cleveland Browns last night. You heard Rich Eisen first announcing it there with the fake wow, presumably, because everybody for the last 2 days has known that it's going to be Baker Mayfield. Mike Carlson, good afternoon, good evening to you. You were up all night watching this. You weren't that surprised in the end that it was Baker Mayfield, surely?
I was a little bit, but not so, because since we talked the other morning, then the word was coming out that they liked Mayfield. Up till then, I thought Sam Darnold was going to be their guy. And the happiest people in the world were the Jets at number 3, because they then took Sam Darnold, who was the guy they wanted all the time, but weren't sure they were going to get. Mike Mayock was the other guy talking. I think when he said that Mayfield's got a lot of swag, he meant swagger. Although he will get a lot of swag as well after he signs his contract. But if you look at Hugh Jackson, the coach, who apparently didn't know about this till the last minute, which is one of the really weird sub-stories that was going on. Hugh, when he was at Cincinnati, had Andy Dalton. And Andy Dalton is similar in some ways to Baker Mayfield, undersized. Mayfield's got a better arm, I think, than Andy Dalton. And you just wonder if Hugh was going to be there as the head coach much longer, or if Todd Haley, who they've brought in to be the offensive coordinator, will become head coach. And Haley came from Pittsburgh, and everybody says, oh, Pittsburgh, it's Ben Roethlisberger and throw the ball way downfield. But Haley and Roethlisberger had this huge feud about 3 years ago because Haley wanted to play more of a short passing dink and dunk game, but that isn't Ben's game. And so I think that would be a pretty good fit for Mayfield as well.
Is that Mayfield's game, that he is a short, accurate thrower?
Yeah, very accurate. That's the one thing that stands out when you look at him the offenses they play in the Big 12 and the defenses they face often leave receivers pretty wide open. It's not difficult, but he's always hitting the receivers in stride, putting the ball in the place where you need to put it. And that's one of the big differences with passers. There are some guys who have big arms and can throw the ball really hard, but placing the ball, I think, is more important than pure arm strength.
The Browns actually have a fantastic offense, and they're looking for the quarterback to help it ignite. That's one theory. If you look at the additions that they've made, Carlos Hyde added to Duke Johnson is now a complementary backfield where you've got a thumper for the first 2 downs, somebody you can actually you can throw it to and run routes, so Duke Johnson can actually be on the field the whole time. The signing of Landry now makes a whole heap of sense because he is that kind of short, intermediate target for somebody who can throw that ball accurately. And if Josh Gordon can be anything like the previous Josh Gordon, then they've got one of the most transcendent talents on the outside in the whole NFL. So all of a sudden, this is a genuinely exciting attack.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've got it absolutely right. When they signed Carlos Hyde, that kind of said to me they weren't going to go after Saquon Barkley, who was probably the best pure talent at running back in the draft. And they also had the 4th pick, and they surprised people there by taking a corner, Ward, out of Ohio State, rather than Bradley Chubb, the pass rushing end, where they already have Myles Garrett. But end and cornerback on defense are kind of complementary. You need a cover corner who can cover man-to-man in order to give yourself the opportunity to blitz extra defenders. And if you have that, it makes your defensive line better. So I think they take a little bit of a chance there, but that was obviously the position they wanted to fill, and Ward was the best guy at that position in the draft.
I wonder if there's a slight shift in terms of the importance of pass rush versus the importance of corners. Obviously, the pass rush tends to be on the field more often and can have more of an impact over the course of a game, at least on the face of it. And yet, when you think about it, if you've got good corners, then the quarterback has to hold the ball for that little bit longer, and suddenly a mediocre pass rush is actually a good pass rush.
That's why I said they're complementary. Ideally you have both. You think of what Denver did when they had that great pass rush and went to the Super Bowl, and they had 3 really excellent corners. So that extra split second that the quarterback has to wait helps that pass rush. And the other thing that's happened, of course, is that NFL teams play most of the game now in what they used to call a sub package, which means more than 4 defensive backs. So you really need to have 3 corners, or you need to have 3 safeties, one of whom can play as the slot or as the nickel corner, in order to be able to cover the offenses you're facing now, which is why I thought Minkah Fitzpatrick, who fell down to 11 to Miami, was one of the best picks in the draft. Just love him as a player, but he's able to do all of those things. He could help you out at any of those positions and allow you to keep 5 defensive backs on the field all the time.
We did get 5 quarterbacks going in the first round, and I don't know if it's the first time ever, but certainly a Heisman Trophy winner went first and a Heisman Trophy winner went 32nd. The pick of Lamar Jackson to the Baltimore Ravens was one of the other most interesting picks of the night, particularly given that there were 2 opportunities for the New England Patriots to pick him, and both times they declined. What happened there?
I think I said the other day that I wasn't convinced New England wanted to take a quarterback at that point. I think it would have been fascinating if they had, which says to me they're expecting Tom Brady to probably play at least 2 seasons, and they don't want to get into another Jimmy Garoppolo situation maybe with the guy. But they also had other needs, and they filled the main one of those with their first pick, with Isaiah Wynn, who I believe will play tackle for them, at least immediately. And then with the second one, I expected them to trade out of that one. But I think Baltimore didn't want to trade with New England. They preferred to trade with Philadelphia to move back in. And I loved what the Ravens did, because Jackson, the NFL is, to an extent, stuck in an old-fashioned mindset, and there's a lot of groupthink that goes on. So as soon as people started questioning Lamar Jackson, does he have the talent or the skills to be a quarterback? Maybe he needs to be a wide receiver. And even if you ignore the subtext of black quarterbacks, which I think at this stage in our lives we should be able to ignore, the groupthink I started to take over among a lot of teams. And the same thing applied with Josh Rosen, who fell. I mean, he didn't fall far, but he went down to 10, because as soon as people started saying, oh, well, he's a smart kid, he's got other interests besides football, he's too intelligent for the game, that kind of stuff, teams, I think, started shying off of him. And in both cases, Jackson and Rosen, I see no reason why they should have. The talent is obviously there, and I think I said on the other day when I was here, it's up to the coaches to bring that talent out. Yeah,
it almost seems like, despite the fact that we have a number 1 pick in Baker Mayfield and a number 32 pick in Lamar Jackson, it's hard to tell which of them is most likely to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things is neither guy has to step in and play immediately. And in fact, in the case of Jackson, you wouldn't expect him to have to play this season unless Joe Flacco were to get hurt. And interestingly, they signed Robert Griffin, RG3, last month as a backup. And a couple of people have pointed out, if he knew they were going to draft Lamar Jackson, he probably would have signed as a backup. But the possibility exists that they could get out from under Joe Flacco's contract, and then they would have Robert Griffin and Lamar Jackson as their 2 quarterbacks, relatively similar styles, both very different to Joe Flacco. And it would make a great fit if they could keep both guys happy and on the team at the same time. Like I said, I love what they did. I think you're absolutely right. The difference between these 5 guys was simply that were taken in the first round was simply in the perceptions of the buyers, and everybody had their own idea as to what they wanted and what was the fit for them, but none of them are a lock, a sure lock, and I think all of them have enough talent to succeed, except maybe for Ryan Allen, who I think has an uphill struggle in Buffalo.
I'm a little bit surprised that there was some slippage in the case of the final two who did go in the 10th and 32nd position, given the massive rewards that those people who risked taking quarterbacks last year in the first round ended up getting in terms of the Mahomes and Watson, as we spoke about the other day. It actually wasn't as explosive a draft, or first round of the draft, in the end, as perhaps we had anticipated.
It's funny because I was wondering about quarterback panic, say. Everybody says, we've got to get a quarterback. But when you looked at the teams who needed quarterbacks, they all had somebody in place who could at least get them through the year. They'd all gone out and signed people. And then you had a few other teams that might want to upgrade, like Baltimore with Joe Flacco and Miami with Tannehill. If Rosen had been there at 11, I think Miami would have taken Rosen without any hesitation at all. Jacksonville maybe with Blake Bortles. And then you have the teams with the old quarterbacks like Eli Manning and Tom Brady who need a long-term replacement. So there were teams with a need, but nobody's need was that totally pressing, so that they had to panic and go up. And I think Arizona, that move to 10 to get Rosen was a very smart move for them, and not only because I think he'll be very good. Bruce Arians is no longer coaching there, so he may survive in the new system where Arians tends to let his quarterbacks get hit a lot, but also because they've got Sam Bradford, who is highly unlikely to play an entire season without getting hurt, and then they've got Glennon as his backup, and we already know that Rosen, I think, is a more talented guy than Glennon.
Yeah, poor Mike Glennon must hate draft day at this point. The NFC West is clearly where it's at. It's got like 4 teams with proper quarterbacks. Not many divisions can actually say that.
Yeah, and Jimmy G has never lost a game.
Yeah, and hopefully never does. Last question for you. Who were the big winners then overall after the first round of the draft? I mean, is the grade for the Browns good enough for them to say, yeah, we won the day, or is there just that little bit of doubt about them?
I think there's a bit of more than a little bit of doubt about them, and I think there's a bit of doubt about the Giants with Barkley. I heard Dave Gettleman say running backs are great, and they'll last a long time. Jonathan Stewart's still as good as he ever was. They just signed Jonathan Stewart. If he's that good, why do they need Saquon Barkley? I mean, he's a great player, and I'm not putting him down. The team, there are a couple of teams I thought just did really well by sitting where they were, like Chicago, say. And picking up the linebacker who's just tremendous player. And Dallas picked up Van Der Esch, who's a kind of like he's more of a big middle linebacker type, but very, very mobile, and like the Chicago guy. Tampa moving down. And then taking Vita Vea, who's the monstrous defensive tackle from Washington University, who the Redskins coveted with the next pick in the draft. And San Diego, because Tampa went for the tackle, which was a great move, San Diego then picked up the kind of banging safety that they really needed. So I think those teams really benefited, and it's hard to fault Baltimore for what they did. And Philadelphia came out with a couple of great picks from the Ravens. Yeah,
so it's one of those rare situations where almost everybody, apart from the Browns, is a winner.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. If you took a poll of the 32 teams, apart from the ones who didn't have a pick, everybody would have said that they're winners. We got the guys that we wanted. We're looking good. And they'll say the same thing after the third day is through on Saturday.
That's why it's one of the best things in world sport. Mike, great stuff. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Thanks, man.
Oh, thanks, Ger. You too.
Hey, hope you enjoyed that latest offering from Off the Ball. If you want to subscribe, and you should, check out just up here. All our latest stuff is just down here. Generally, knock yourself out.